Up hour. All right, that's my break. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another edition of the Level Up Hour. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV, and I am joined by three of my favorite Red Hatters. But I'd like to hand it off to the one and only, the illustrious Langdon White. Langdon, please take it away.
Hi, everybody. Hope everything is going well for you. I know I am significantly lacking in coffee,
Yes.
but you know, we are starting to get a little more functional, so that's a good thing. Also had a few days off, so you know, we may be starting a little slowly today, but that's probably good for the topic at hand. So today we're going to be talking about subscriptions, and I would like to let's hit the slides first and then go and do intros. Does that work?
Sure?
Okay. No, let's do intros first.
Yeah,
I'm not really on the fence. All right, so first up we have Rich Jerrido. Do you want to introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about what you do, like why we're talking to you about subscriptions?
Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm Rich Jerrido, product manager at Red Hat inside of Red Hat's management business unit. Myself, along with the other product managers on my team, we're responsible for the subscription experience across the various Red Hat tools. So if you think about the breadth of things that we cover everything from subscription manager to the customer portal, to the subscription experience in Satellite, subscription watch at cloud.redhat.com, as well as we work with the various product teams like the OpenShift team or the Ansible team around how to integrate their tools and improve their subscription experience. I've been at Red Hat roughly 10 years, actually 10 and a half years at this point. Been in a number of roles. So I do subscriptions now, and I used to be a PM for Satellite, used to do technical marketing for Satellite, and was a solutions architect in the sales organization prior to that. So I kind of been around the block, and thanks for having me here today.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah. And Gordon Tillmore, who's just got the little Tillmore going. You know, we're going to think he's like a hacker or something. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Maybe I need to fix that little Tillmore first. I don't know. So, hey guys, I'm thrilled to be on here. So, I mean, you know when you've made it big when you're on OpenShift TV. So this is a dream come true. This is like childhood dream fulfilled, right? So check the box and move on. But no,
landing on thick this morning, isn't he?
Well, you know, no, I'm thrilled to be here, really. Yeah, so product marketing. I am in our cloud platforms business unit. I have been at Red Hat for a long time, 17 years in various roles. And one of the things that I'm responsible for is our Level Up program, and working closely with these guys with the Level Up hour here. So that's why it's like the project has become a reality to a certain degree here this morning, where I'm glad to be on front and center with you guys. So yeah, happy to take questions and discuss all things Level Up and beyond as well. So I'm looking forward to a good conversation this morning.
Cool. It's unusual for me to be in a Red Hat conversation where I'm new guy. You know, because I've only been here for 8.5 years.
I'm way behind you on that one.
Yeah,
I've only been here 3 years. So
it's kind of crazy. You know, most of the time it's just I'm short guy. You know, because I hang out with a lot of.
No, that's me.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm only 5'10", you know, and so everybody around me is like 6'2" plus. You know, when you hang out with the Czech guys, and I know Chris is pretty tall as well. Mm-hmm. So why don't we, now we're going to hit the slides, mostly to introduce the topic, and for my slight mea culpa. We'll talk about that in a second. And here are the slides. And our fancy graphics. Yes. And although apparently we might be doing a color scheme change, not that I can talk today, so we'll get all excited about our brand new slides soon. So check us out on Twitter. I'm at Langdon with a 1, and Chris Short is Chris Short. And Rich, you are, I'm blanking.
Side something.
Side angle side.
Side angle side. Yeah.
Yeah, that was back from my days where I aspired to be a geometry teacher, and then I gave it up for the world of programming.
Nice. That's awesome. I could, yeah, geometry, one of my favorite quotes. So, and then Gordon, you don't use Twitter much, right?
Not much. I've got a hand. I'm at Tillmore, but you know, yeah, I politics and other things have turned me away from Twitter, to be totally honest with you.
I can't blame you for that.
Yeah. All right. So you can also find us on our Discord. The link is there, and I'm sure Chris will drop it in with the bot. And you can come and chat with us there. We have a couple different channels, but generally speaking, the general channel is more than enough. And, if you have any specific questions, I'm often hanging out there. And then here is information about the show. So a little bit of why Gordon's here today is to talk about the kind of level up program. And so you can find out more details if you go to that URL, red.ht/leveluphour, which Chris, I don't know if you have a bot for that. I can't remember.
I already dropped it in there.
Awesome. All right, well done. And then, so today we're going to talk about subscriptions, and specifically, basically, we really want to take questions from the audience. However, we also want to talk about kind of like what it means to kind of have a subscription, what happens with things like UBI, and then things like there's also this new training subscription that we might talk about a little bit. I think we're going to have a follow-up show on that in a few, actually in like a month and a half or so. And then, unfortunately, I don't have the show notes from last time, which was our SE Linux episode. I just kind of didn't finish them in time.
You have been a little busy. I mean,
yes, it's been a little busy. Yeah, we did an interesting customer virtual tour last week. Except it was on it was with APAC, or Asia Pacific, which is a typical industry name for the region of the world that includes like China and India and Australia. So we were on that time zone for the week doing customer meetings. So that was really interesting, actually, but made things like being awake for a 9 a.m. show a little difficult. So that's what we got for slides today.
awesome.
And I will hit the stop sharing button.
Yeah.
So let's start off with, I don't know, I was kind of thinking is that, Rich, can you give us a little bit about one of the things that helps when you're trying to use a piece of software is understanding the philosophy behind it. And so if you understand the philosophy behind the software, like what its goals are, it can often make using the software simpler and easier. And so if you can kind of give us a little bit of what's the driving force behind the subscription engine. I don't want to say subscription management because I don't want to imply that particular product. What are you trying to accomplish for customers and for users of that tool?
All right. So you asked me the great philosophical, what is the subscription question?
Yeah.
So the best way to look at it, and my team, we're relatively a newly formed team. So one of the things that that I have the charter to do along with the rest of the folks on our team is to kind of unify the experience, right? Prior to probably about early 2018, Red Hat subscription experience was very disjointed and fragmented, right? So we have a lot of, honestly, places of friction in the experience where we need to address. But when my team formed, we kind of had this long discussion of what is a subscription? If you had to define what a subscription is to a person that's either inside or outside of Red Hat, what is it? And basically, we look at a subscription as being comprised of five basic core things. First and foremost, what do you get, right? Most Red Hat subscriptions give you access to some form of content, right? Usually bits to install RHEL, bits to install OpenShift, but not always, right? We got training subscriptions, we got learning subscriptions, but generally you get access to something. That's the first thing. Second thing that describes a subscription is how long do you get access to it for, right? The term, how long does it last? Usually a year, sometimes 3, sometimes shorter, it just depends. And then the next 3 things that make up what a subscription are really just a bunch of use cases, right? Who do you call for support? Do you call Red Hat for support, or do you call an OEM? When do you call us for support? 24/7 or 5/12, or not at all? So we have some subscriptions you can't call for support. And then also, what type of support do you get when you call us, right? A lot of times, most folks want production support, but we also have development level support where we'll give you assistance with design. And every Red Hat subscription is basically combinatory combinations of those 5 things, right? If you change any one of those things, it also changes things like pricing, because we sell those things at different metrics, right? You pay more for premium versus standard. So that's what a subscription is. So then the goal of the subscription tooling is to help folks understand how much of each type do they have deployed, where do they have them deployed at, and are they above or below the capacity of what they've purchased. Now, the way we've traditionally have implemented that in the past was we kind of made you micromanage it a bit at the operating system level, right? And one of the things we realized in doing that was there's a lot of friction in doing that, because you're crossing what we call a persona boundary, right? Operators care about operating, procurement cares about bills. And we had historically built a set of tools that try to satisfy both personas and didn't really do good at it, right? So you'll start to see in the future of Red Hat tooling, if you're a satellite user, you've probably already seen this, but for our customer portal users, you'll start seeing a new subscription experience going out that does not require you to do things like attach subscriptions. So my team's goal at a very, very high level is I want to help the operator to understand, can I deploy a thing without someone yelling at me, right? And then I want a procurement person to be able to understand, at what point do I have to pay Red Hat money? How much do I have to pay them, right? Those are kind of the 2 core goals of subscription management. Now, we also have to take the existing systems we have today and turn them around and kind of starting to get them to march in that direction. And that's going to take us some time, right? But we do have a lot of new capabilities that are available today that help.
So I have actually, I have that, in a sense, quasi-exact experience, right? I primarily spent most of my career as a developer. And our company, whatever organization that was, whether I was consulting to them or working for them, would have a subscription to something, right? So for example, they have, a Red Hat subscription. However, as a developer, I don't, generally speaking, have the ability to go after the content myself, right? And as a result, I have to kind of go through a middleman, of some admin type person or whatever, to access the content that's available to the company. The problem is much like FTP by email, if you want a super throwback.
Oh, gosh, that's old.
You have to know what to ask for, right? So kind of what I'm curious about is I really like the distinction of kind of the procurement person versus the kind of operator person. What about kind of the developer person? Do you have a plan or a thought around where developers would be able to access subscription content that is available to my company? So I don't mean like a developer subscription. I mean an actual company one, or at least a way for me to know, have a catalog that's available to me that is pre-approved or something like that. So admins often don't want me to be able to install things that they don't want to be able to, or that they are not going to allow deploy of.
Right. So from that perspective, right, we've been looking at, myself, because I'm really responsible mostly for tooling, but my tooling supports business initiatives that my friends in the RHEL business unit or the developer business unit work towards. And one of the things that we've looked at was, when we say developer, there's actually multiple types of developers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
there's no one size fits all, right?
No. Mm-hmm.
There is, hey, I'm an independent developer and I want access to the bits because I like your ecosystem and I want to learn your stuff because maybe I want to build a career on top of your technology, right? The way we make it so that person access subscription services might be a little different than the way, the large Fortune 500 company that has, 5,000 developers needs to access our subscription services, right? Both of those are valid use cases, but the way we take them through the experience might be a little different. So one of the things that, the team's working on and my team's supporting is those developer experiences for those large organizations, right? Red Hat believes that it is in the best interest of our relationship with our customers to make it easy for you to use RHEL for development style use cases. Well, RHEL and other Red Hat products, but leading with RHEL. So you'll see, new Red Hat programs in the near future that will address those types of use cases, so that if, again, if we go back to like, what's a subscription, right? There are subscriptions that you pay for a certain reason, right? You want a certain class of support, you want a certain type of support. But we also have subscriptions that are like, you know what? If I just need access to the bits, I don't plan on calling you, maybe we can make those subscriptions more freely available inside of the large enterprises, and be able to do that so that not every developer in the company has to go to a portal and sign up, right? We want to make it so that you getting access to that software is a function of your relationship, and that's handled at the account or organization level versus, a big email goes out to a distribution list is like, hey, every developer in the company, right? Go to this portal and sign up. Right? Because that's one, people aren't going to do it. People are busy. And that's just another form of friction and just a few more words.
I think I've seen those emails inside Red Hat, just to be clear, about like
I will neither confirm nor deny the existence of said emails inside Red Hat. Like, we got big company problems too, so we know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think that's actually, I think you kind of keep touching on another point that I think a lot of people find confusing, or don't. It's not really that they find it confusing, is that I think they don't realize it, is that your subscription is almost more about your support model rather than it is about kind of access to bits. Like, in a sense that you, for the vast majority of the subscriptions, right, the kind of baseline is just kind of access to the bits for that thing. And when I say, just to be clear, when I say access to the bits, right, what we mean is like binary bits. In other words, things I can download and run, right? But it's kind of a slang term. And so when you're kind of, kind of like all of them have access to the software itself, in a particular class. So if you buy an OpenShift subscription, you get access to that software. But then the escalation is really just around the support level, right? Are there other variables that one should be aware of, or is it really just that kind of support level that is the big gate or limiting factor for the most part?
So it's the big things that change probably the most often that most people would care about is the support level, right? I'll say support stuff, because support stuff is basically 3 different variables, right? There is the when do you call for support, who do you call for support, and what do they help you with when you call, right? Those are kind of the 3 things that go in the support bucket. And depending on your organization, you may need different combinations of those. Sometimes the bits do in fact change, right? There is not a one size fits all, for instance, for like RHEL content. For some of the other products, like a OpenShift or Rev or like Satellite, they do have a one size fits all content model where all of their subscriptions get the same stuff. But in RHEL, there are scenarios where there are either add-ons for RHEL, so things like high availability or the resilient storage and things like that. Those are add-ons that you would pay additional costs for. And even inside of RHEL, there are other things like we have like extended maintenance streams for RHEL, where if you need to stay on a minor release for a longer period of time, that's something that you can either purchase separately, or you can kind of like uplift to a bigger subscription, which includes that. So the content does change from time to time. So it isn't always just support that changes what subscription you buy. But that's probably the big one. I'd say, like, of all the things that changes most, it's usually support first, then content, and then like terms, kind of a weird one, because like, well, of course, if you need it, you need it. It's just a matter of, are you going to get it for a 1-year term, a 3-year term, and even occasionally we have 5-year terms.
Right. One quick shout out, which you mentioned kind of in passing, but I, like I said, would definitely shout out for, is the developer support, which, like, I think that term is also confusing because there's kind of different meanings to that. But when you talk about it, when you get it, the developer support subscription, I can't remember exactly what it's called, and that kind of, you can actually call and ask for kind of architecture help. which I find particularly interesting because I was a Microsoft developer for a long time, and it's very difficult to communicate with kind of anyone within the kind of Microsoft support ecosystem without like a bug. And this is kind of something different than that. This is more like, I'm trying to build out this environment, am I kind of approaching it the right way? And in my experience, I've only kind of messed around with that with really in the RHEL kind of world. But is that kind of more uniform, or is it still mostly RHEL? Is it things like, can I call up and talk about containers with somebody at Red Hat?
So the definition of development support, I'll tell you right now, I don't like the terminology we use, right? It's overloaded terminology.
Yeah.
Right. But putting that aside, it is a great program. I think the best analogy that I would probably draw, like an outside Red Hat analogy, was developer support is very much like an MSDN subscription from Microsoft, right? It's not the subscription you're going to pick up the phone and call when you got a production down situation, right? That's not the purpose of development support. The purpose of development support is, hey, I'm building this app and I'm calling this method or API. Is this the right way to do it? Like, will Shadow Man be upset if I do this the wrong way?
Exactly.
Like, those are the kind of questions that are included in development support, which is awesome, honestly, because it means that you have a matrix of support all the way from the inception of your application. And then, as that application grows, matures, if it ever goes into production, you can put it on a system that has production support, and then you get that, that runtime break fix support. Now,
that's exactly my point is, right? Like, we have hundreds of pieces of software, maybe thousands of pieces of software in just RHEL, right? And there's no way I, as a developer, even an architect, can necessarily say, this is the direction that system D, home D is going over time. So, is there somebody I can call that's an expert so that I know that if I kind of invest in this part of the API, will it be there for the long term? And it sounds like that is something that we offer. I also wanted to give the caveat that, I haven't been a Microsoft developer in many, many, many years. So all of that could have changed. It was just kind of my experience, a long time ago. Sorry to cut you off a little bit there.
No, the only thing I was going to add is, depending upon which product that we have at Red Hat, some products offer development support, some don't, right? So RHEL offers it. The middleware products offer it. I believe OpenShift currently does not. I think that's a correct statement. And I think part of that is just because most people are doing development on things on top of OpenShift.
Right.
Not the people who would need development level support for OpenShift itself would be like a partner who's integrating maybe like someone was building like a container scanning app. Like, those are the kind of folks who would generally need development level support for something like OpenShift. So that is something, just when you kind of go down that route of development, that depending on the product, you may want to talk to either an account team or a Red Hatter just to understand if development support's available. But for most of the portfolio, it is.
Right. Well, I mean, so for the vast majority of software kind of near OpenShift, you're really running RHEL, right? In the sense that, you're running a container, which is actually doing your thing. And that container has, RHEL content. It's not really OpenShift content per se, right? And so, that would be, exactly your point, which I think is interesting. I wanted to digress for a minute. I felt like there was a good transition there, but maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. So, Gordon, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about kind of what the Level Up program is doing regarding subscriptions.
Yeah, from a training standpoint, or from the.
Well, that was I was kind of
that's
what I was thinking. It was like leading with training.
Sure.
But in general,
a couple of different things. First off, I have to admire the fact that Rich invoked Shadow Man. Would Shadow Man mind if we went down this path? I kind of like thinking of that. But anyway, so Level Up is really the goal of Level Up is to reach out to all of our Linux aficionados, our RHEL aficionados and gurus out there, and try to quote unquote level up their domain expertise, right, or their skill sets, and give them a path to get to Kubernetes, right? So whether it's their skill set itself, which we have some prescribed training for, which we can talk about, or the actual OpenShift subscriptions, right? So we're doing both, right? So we've got outreach where, in essence, on the subscription front, what we're saying is, look, we want you to kind of put your toe in the water with OpenShift and with supported OpenShift at that. We want to give you a subscription if you meet, certain basic criteria, and the criteria is fairly basic is the word, right? So, I mean, if you've got active RHEL in your organization, and I think the cutoff is 5 active RHEL subscriptions, and you don't have OpenShift, well, guess what? You can get a full year support for 10 cores of OpenShift to try it out. So level up your organizational agility, so to speak, if I'm quoting the marketing speak here, right? But Langdon, to your point about training, well, first let me ask you guys a question. You guys had Red Hat certified system administrators. You guys know those. These are our guys on the ground, right? There you go. Chris raises his hand.
I used to be one, yeah.
Well, if you used to be one, you're always one, right?
Right, yeah.
What the certification director, Randy Russell's always told me, and I used to work really closely with Randy, but what he's always told me is, once an RHCSA, always an RHCSA. It's like a Marine thing, right? I mean, you never not an RHCSA. Now you can be current or non-current. I mean, you can get into the semantics of it all, and we can get into that if you want. But back to my question to you guys, when we're talking about Red Hat certified system administrators, anyone want to put out a guess in terms of how many RHCSAs are out there on the planet?
Oh gosh, probably in the tens of thousands.
Yeah, you might even want to go higher than that.
No,
So
hundreds of thousands?
I'd say hundreds of thousands at this point.
Yeah, Rich, you're onto it. So I think at last count, and they don't quote it, but it's close to 200,000, I think, and maybe more. I don't know. I know they used to put out figures, but they don't do that as much anymore. But the bottom line is, look, as there's a lot of Red Hat certified system administrators who, these guys are RHEL champions, right? And they've been RHEL champions for not just years, but decades now. And so what we're trying to do is reach out to these folks and say, look, RHEL, you've made careers out of RHEL. Your architectures are based on this now. Let's move you to the next level if that's where you want to go, and we'll make it easy for you. So we just in a nutshell, I mean, we've got a couple things. So all RHCSAs, and I can give you guys a landing page for this later on, but all RHCSAs, if you're current or non-current, so if you're Chris Short, for instance, and you're non-current, you're eligible just as much as if you got your RHCSA yesterday. But we've got 50% off this, one of our most popular courses, this D0180 OpenShift 1 course. So I think normally, look at the webpage, but I'm pretty sure normally it's $2,700. Get 50% off. So log in with your RHCSA account number and you're good to go. It'll appear in your shopping cart at 50% off. And there's also, to tail onto that, a newish Red Hat credential certification for Kubernetes that was launched, I'm going to say August, September, somewhere in there. But it is Red Hat Certified Specialist in Containers and Kubernetes. So it's got a longish name, but we've got that at 50%.
Thing lately.
Yeah, right.
So we just keep making the names longer for all of our products.
Well, at least it doesn't have enterprise in there, or, platform
Not
or
yet.
something.
Don't give them ideas.
No. Just be happy we don't add like 4 work groups instead.
That's true. That's true.
At any rate, it's true. But this one's 50% off too, right? So the whole goal, I mean, you guys know this better than I do, right? I mean, when you look at kind of foundational Kubernetes, what is Kubernetes? It's distributed Linux, right? So we want to give people a path to move from A to B, and that's what we're hopefully doing with this level up program and some of these educational offerings. So.
Well, that last one, I mean, the kind of name change there, and I think content change as well. I mean, kind of focusing, and we've talked about this on the show before, is like, OpenShift is a convenient, useful bundle of Kubernetes and a bunch of other stuff, right? It's not fundamentally different. And so if you want to understand Kubernetes, taking that course is going to teach you how to understand Kubernetes, and maybe the variations that are around what the OpenShift distribution of that tool chain, but it's not like a big change in the tool chain. And so I think that was a wise choice on the kind of I don't know. We keep changing the name of that group, but the learning classes committee group, organization within Red Hat.
Exactly. GLS, Red Hat training.
Yeah. I get
know.
confused about which one's which.
I do like that you came up with a new nickname for Chris there, though. The Open Short, kind of like that.
Yeah,
So,
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So, but my real question about the active versus current RHCSA is like, does being a non-active RHCSA still get you into the secret party at Summit? Is really
that is an excellent question.
That's what I'm curious to know the answer to.
I would presume so, but
right?
I would have to defer to our friends in GLS land, that training land. I'm not sure. I would have to assume so, though.
Yeah.
This might be why I always carry at least one active Red Hat cert. Just
there you go.
And just to be clear with that, just so you guys know, so we were joking earlier about Marine, once an RHCSA, always an RHCSA, and frankly, that's the same with RHCE, RHCA, all of our certs, right? But the whole basis is if you've gotten your certification in the last 3 years, you are current. And apparently that shows up on Certification Central and other places. You can check and you can see if that's the case. If it's beyond that 3-year period, it's non-current. Not that you've lost it. It never expires. It never goes away. It's just current versus non-current. And you can always re-up it. And in fact, as part of Level Up, another offer is, hey, if you're a non-current RHCSA and you want to re-up it and test on the latest and greatest and take the RHCSA exam, you can do that. That's another 50% off that they're giving folks. So I think normally it's $400, I want to say, USD, and now it's half that if you're a non-current RHCSA. So Chris, maybe you should pony up some money here.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe.
You might
have a question though that pertains to this. Like what about the non-RHCSA folks, right? Like, are we doing anything for them potentially to help get them like jump started into the container era?
Yeah, it's a great question, Narendra. There is D0101, so many D0101, I think it is, which I believe is, for a while that was free of charge. And I think if you do a Google search on D0101, it still might be. There are, what I can tell you without tipping my hand too much, there are plans to do exactly what Narendra is talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, and another note on that front too, this certification exam, I'm speaking of this with the long name, right? Red Hat Certified Specialist in Kubernetes and containers and Kubernetes. I got it right. Yes. That you don't need to be an RHCSA to take that. So, I mean, you can jump into that right now. It's $400, I think, if you want to take it, and bam, you are Red Hat certified. So you can take it from your computer. You obviously don't have to go to a Red Hat training facility to do it with COVID.
Which was a heavy lift by itself.
As I understand it.
The GLS team, yeah.
Yeah, really. And one thing
they rolled out actually a whole new infrastructure for doing remote learning as well over the past 2 months or something. So even if you've done remote stuff with them before, I think you'll have a better experience now because like I said, they just revamped the infrastructure for how it works. I don't remember the details of exactly what they did, but I do know they kind of rolled out a whole new platform.
The perfect segue, and just to close out on my thinking on this, I mentioned the 50% off the course, the D0180. There's not obviously a whole lot of in-person training going on in the world right now. Hopefully that changes soon as we all get shots in our arms, right? But so GLS, Langdon, to your point, they really have been ramping up their online efforts. And this particular offer here, it relates to that. So the two formats that you can get this 50% off in are what they call online education, I believe it is, where literally you get all of the course curriculum and you get all of the video feeds and webinars and labs and other things, and you've got 90 days to take it, right? So you've got a fair amount of time to take it. And then the other format you can take is what they call video classroom, which is literally a video of the 4-day class, just kind of asynchronous, right? You can kind of, it's like streaming, Netflix or Amazon. You kind of stream it and play it when you want to play it, and you get the same content therein. So that's the deal with the two offers here.
So we did have a question in the chat. that's probably a little bit more for Rich, but my guess is you're not going to know the answer to this. But it basically, the question was, one of the challenges that the audience member had was when they kind of call in for support, they seem to get routed to weird time zones.
Weird locations on the planet due to time zones.
Yes, good point. And as a result, doesn't have as kind of timely a response as they would prefer. I'm just curious, is that like, do you know if is there regions of excellence, as it were, around support? Because knowing how Red Hat engineering works, that wouldn't surprise me. Like we have, these clusters of developers who work on particular projects in various regions of the world that don't really have any correlation with anything except that that's where the cluster got built. And I was just curious, perhaps support's the same way, and that might be the routing, or if there's other routing things that you can do. Or I'm just curious if you know anything about this. I thought it was an interesting question, and I have no idea, to be honest.
So it's kind of a little bit of all of that, right? So one of the things that support and engineering try to partner on really well is making sure that within a particular meta region, right? So think of North America / Latin America, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and APAC. We try to have support personnel as well as QE personnel, as well as engineering personnel, kind of all co-located, right? So if a customer calls in with a critical issue, we can kind of go soup the nuts, in that time zone. We try that as best as possible. That it isn't universally held because some of our products are incredibly specialized. Think of things like our identity products, right? They are some incredibly complex products, but that's something that support and engineering try to aim for. So that's what'll happen a lot of times, is that they'll route your support case to the area that has the most amount of expertise. If it's something like RHEL, we have RHEL covered in every time zone across the planet, right? If it's a newer product or a more specialized product, they may have expertise in a certain region, so they may send that ticket there first, even though that might be outside of the time zone of the person who opened the case. It is, I wouldn't say it's hit or miss, because that kind of sounds bad, but it does vary by product.
Okay. And that makes sense, right? I mean, like some of the products are smaller than the others. And somebody else was complaining in the chat about wanting to sleep at night, which, that seems, I thought we got into software because we didn't care about daylight.
No, anyways. So just a real quick technical note. It looks like Discord, there's some issues with the chat aggregation. So I wanted to mention this. Pinhead over in Discord chat says there is a time zone field you should make sure is set for you, JP Dade. So make sure that time zone field is actually set for US Eastern time. Double check next time you call in, or just call in or email in, and it is okay, great. That's weird.
Yeah, well, or it's to Rich's point, if you're asking about we can only have so much expertise in any given location, right? So if you're asking some deep dark question about how HA proxy works under this kind of particular unusual condition, you're going to get to the expert, which may or may not be your time zone, versus a more generalized question like the things I would ask, which is going to be able to answer by a grammar school kid. So that was kind of like I said, I thought it was an interesting question, so I wanted to kind of bring it up. The other thing, and this is a little bit to Gordon, somebody else mentions in the chat as well that their company actually offers a bonus for getting to certification on. They actually specifically talk about AWS, but I was just kind of curious. Have you heard anything about that being effective in the field? To try to encourage certifications. In our customers, not obviously us per se, but our customers kind of saying, hey, we really want to encourage you to have these subscription or these certifications, so we offer this bonus.
Yeah, I can't speak to a specific instance, but you hear it, anecdotally all the time, right? Where our partners and our even customers, whatever else. I mean, the most successful ones are the ones who have this domain expertise in place. So I know that, I want to say it was Accenture who had a similar program in place. Don't quote me on that, but I know I've seen several instances where it's exactly that, right? So borrowing this AWS model, but for Red Hat, where it's like, hey, look, let's get our guys upskilled to do that. Once you hit this threshold, we'll give you bonus X. Once you get this threshold, bonus Y. There's something out there called Red Hat learning subscriptions, right? And they even offer like a 7-day free trial on this. It literally just opens up the entire curriculum to an individual, right? And you can get enterprise licenses too, I think. But I want to say it runs like $6,000 for the basic and another $1,000 on top of that for the more advanced, which gives you so $7,000 gives you access to all of our certifications exams, for instance, right? So you have, in essence, Red Hat training in a box right there, your year-long subscription. Rich was talking about different types of subscriptions earlier. This is yet another one, right? So I would, if you guys are interested in that, just Google it, Red Hat training subscription, or I think it's Red Hat learning subscription actually. And they have a 7-day free trial. You can check it out. And it's worth looking into.
And I think that also just launched
recently.
Like they just reorganized the program. So if you have looked at it in the past, I think it also very recently changed. So it'd be worthwhile checking it out again. Like I think I remember seeing the announcement or whatever like within the last month or two.
Yeah, I don't want to be like the training guy, because I worked with these guys for years, but that's no longer my realm. So I almost need to bring one of those guys on the program here one of these days. But
we have in fact some of those people coming up in like I said, a couple months.
Look at that. But no, it's Langdon, to your point earlier, they've done a ton of work with this stuff in recent months, right? And a lot of great stuff out there for all of our customers in this front.
Yeah, as a person who got their RHCA before coming to Red Hat, I wish I had a learning subscription. Yeah, like I'll give a very personal example, right? Where I was at my previous organization before coming to Red Hat. Now, granted, this was 10 years ago, right? I was like, you know what? I'm fed up. Like, I need something new. Like, I want to do the next big thing. And in my head, I'm looking around. I'm like, well, what do I want to get certified on? Like, what investment do I want to make in myself? And I was like, you know what? If I get my RHCE, that'll definitely help if I wanted to go work for Red Hat, right? And then I was like, if I get the RHCA, that definitely will help, right? So I went ahead and I made that investment, self-studied, and took advantage of getting all 5 of those certification courses, the 5 that you need for RHEL back then, and then. And it was kind of funny that like 3 weeks after I got my RHCA, now granted, your mileage may vary, but 3 weeks after getting my RHCA, my solutions architect was like, hey, you want to go work for Red Hat? So I got immediate return on investment on that investment I made in those training courses. But given that the learning subscription, gives you access to all the training, right? Which at the time I had to go spend money out of pocket, take my own PTO to go and actually sit in the class and get trained. Now I can, if I had a learning subscription, I can do that from home, right? After hours. You pair that with the zero cost developer subscription, which gives you access to the bits, right? You can build your home lab, you can work on the stuff in a real environment. So there's a whole bunch of goodness that you get that'll help further your career. The learning subscription is one of them. And I said, I wish it was there 10 years ago.
Yeah, funny side note on that. Back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that's when I was still with this GLS marketing. And we rolled out RHCA, Red Hat Certified Architect. And the program we put in place was something called Race to RHCA. And so we had all these grand plans, right? And we wanted to offer one of the first RHCAs, like a Corvette for a year with a Shadow Man logo and an RHCA logo on the front. And we had all this stuff lined up, and we were going to push the button and send this out. And then legal kind of looked at it and barfed on it. They went, are you kidding me?
Giving away a Corvette sounds like a really hard thing for corporation to do.
Well, that's
Well,
what they
in
said
general.
too.
Well, it would be a subscription to a Corvette, right? Like we know how to do subscriptions.
It was a lease. It was a lease. Come on.
Exactly.
But yeah.
So that being said, this I forget the name, but someone brought up in chat something that CNCF does, and I only know this because I'm a CNCF ambassador, and they allow for multiple retakes, right? So if someone's paying $400 to take this exam and they, bomb it for whatever reason, bad night's sleep or whatever, they have to pay another $400 to take it again. And I'm wondering if that's something I could feed back into the GLS pipeline to be like, hey, maybe one free retake during these COVID times might be a good idea.
Yeah, could talk to our GLS marketing folks about that. I know
I thought we are doing something like that.
Are we?
During the COVID time? Yeah.
That's
or maybe that's part of the Level Up program.
No.
But yeah, there was something about free retakes. I remember reading. To your earlier, don't quote me, but it's worth Googling because I swear I read that somewhere. But maybe I misunderstood it.
The longest time, and this is again something I worked on ages ago, but there was something called exam insurance where you could spend another, I don't know, $100 or something and then buy the insurance. So if you didn't pass, you could take it again. I don't think they still offer that.
That doesn't still like. I feel like that would cause me to fail.
Yeah, right. Like if I bought that would be the thing that would jinx myself. Exactly. Right. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't taken very many certification exams like that, but when I was doing the practice test for one, I was having a hard time with it. My wife just kept saying, "You need to learn to think inside the box." Like, and what I specifically remember is that, I was answering questions the way this technology worked in the real world, not the way it was intended to work. So there were bugs, right? I had been using this stuff a long time and I knew where the bugs were. And so I automatically kind of, pivoted around those bugs because you had to do workarounds or whatever. And so I would get the questions wrong on the exams because I was taking into account the bugs. So yes, I've always had a bit of a challenge with certification exams. But who knows? I wanted to go back a little bit to subscriptions and specifically mention, Rich, you mentioned something called Subscription Watch, which I don't really know what that is. However, I did just open it up in a web browser and I thought it looked interesting. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so Subscription Watch is a new application that my team maintains that provides basically fleet-wide visibility into the usage of a product. So one of the big things that we've run into, especially with our larger customers, is they're like, how much am I using and where am I using it at, right? And if you think of tools like Red Hat Satellite, which a lot of our large customers use, those tools operate more or less autonomously from the customer portal. Right. So if we go back to kind of what I said before about how we want to address those personas, right? I want to be able to send a person who doesn't know the intricacies of how the technology works. I want to be able to send them to a portal and say, this is a dotted green line that shows you what you own. And here's a chart that shows you what you've used. Are you above that line or are you below that line? That's what Subscription Watch does. So today it exists for Red Hat Enterprise Linux and for OpenShift. We're in the process of expanding it out for the rest of the portfolio. So if you're an OpenShift customer, you go to OCM, you manage your OpenShift clusters. You have to do nothing for your subscription experience. Just use OpenShift, right? We own OCM, we own Subscription Watch. We just pair the two together. So instead of having to do things like, oh, I got to go and title this system or I got to go and title this cluster, just use the software. We'll visualize how much you're using inside of Subscription Watch. And you go look at that dotted green line. If you're above that line, you might want to have the conversation with your account team. You're below that line, you're good, right? We built integrations into other products like our customer portal as well as Satellite so that those tools can now send their inventory up to Subscription Watch. So if I'm a large customer, I finally have the ability to say or see, here's how much RHEL I'm using. Here's the type of RHEL I'm using. Is it physical, virtual? Is it running on a public cloud? on which public cloud is it running, I now have a dashboard that gives me that. And we show that to you over time. I think we're required to hold 2 or 3 years of data. So now you can actually look at, well, how has my usage changed over time, right? Am I going up and to the right, or am I going, down and to the right? Like, those are the kinds of questions that, empower many of the transactions that we have with you. Like, when your account team's like, hey, it's time to do a renewal. How much RHEL you got? I don't know. Like, we got to make it a lot easier to gather that information, and tools like Subscription Watch help you do that. And Subscription Watch, when it's paired with its kind of first cousin, another technology we built called Simple Content Access, that's another technology that we built really to make life easy for the operator, right? So those two technologies live somewhat in an ecosystem together. Like, you don't have to use them together, but they work really well together, because what Simple Content Access does is it makes it easy for the operator to just operate. Register the system, install the bits. You don't have to worry about attaching entitlements. That's awesome. But we still need to show people how much you're using. And that's what Subscription Watch does.
So what I'm curious about is, I think we have a number of products, for lack of a better term, like starting to land, where we're kind of looking at your whole ecosystem, really kind of giving you visibility into that hybrid thing that you built, right, in your environment. Another one is Red Hat Insights. And I'm curious, is there a plan or an idea or a concept or whatever of starting to bring like Subscription Watch and Insights together? Or are they considered part of the same thing now?
So I'll answer that question very directly, because we're doing this right now. So originally, when my team was built, we actually were kind of just like put in a corner. It was like, hey, like, go fix stuff, right? Go fix stuff, and don't come out until you got something that's awesome, right? So we did, and we went off and we built Subscription Watch, and we built Simple Content Access, and we made those capabilities available to the field. Subscription Watch itself lives on the same platform and infrastructure as Insights, right? So my team's goal, again, is to basically, we joke about it, but we say we make subscription management, subscription non-management, right? Like, if I do my job right, you shouldn't know I exist. And what that means is that we want to integrate into the tools that you're already using. So if you're using Red Hat Insights, you are using Subscription Watch. We just pull all that information out of the Insights database automatically, right? Actually, we don't pull the information out. It's actually the same database. We just look at it differently. So from a technological perspective, don't think of Subscription Watch as being another piece of software you now have to build into your operational processes and have to learn how to use. Right. Think of it as I'm using other Red Hat stuff, it will show up in Subscription Watch. And really, your goal is to log into Subscription Watch from time to time. And does it look right? Does it not look right? And even that, we're going to make that go away, because we're building out some comprehensive notifications. So we can just fire you a notification, when you reach a certain, threshold, just like you can do on the public cloud, when you say, if I go over a certain spend, send me an email or something like that.
So I will say, you kind of talked about it from the perspective of like big customer. Me as a person, because I try to use our products in as much of a public facing way as possible to kind of give them, some testing and, that kind of stuff, just so I can give some feedback. And so I use the developer sub to get access to RHEL, for example. And I know for me, something like Subscription Watch would actually be super handy, because I churn VMs with RHEL so fast a lot of the time that kind of getting a sense of like, why am I getting this error, right? If there's a quick and easy way to say, oh, it's because, you're using 300 subscriptions and you only have access to 10. That's a good piece of data, so that's kind of getting a sense of that overall, consumption, even kind of as a single person, right, is actually really useful, because it's very hard to wrap your head around where all that stuff is allocated at any given time. At least for me, I don't know, maybe I'm just slow.
No, it's a use case that, like, one of my like very next products, like if I look at my roadmap post Summit, because you know how Red Hat works, right? There's everything you do up till Summit, the month after Summit for you to catch your breath, and then you basically start preparing for the next Summit, right? But one of the products that's really high on my roadmap is the developer products, right? I want to make sure that because they're so critical to Red Hat's future, that we represent those in Subscription Watch. And one of the things, like from a use case perspective, a big pain point of our subscription tools, as they have historically existed, has been dealing with high churn environments, right? Because historically, you've had to register the system, entitle the system, and then keep track of those entitlements over time. Right. So if you're doing something like a CI/CD workflow, or maybe you deleted the VM and you forgot to unregister it. I mean, come on, I'm human. Sometimes that happens, right? You don't know until you've exhausted all of your entitlements that you're out. And then you're like, well, which of these systems is the one that has the entitlement that I need to reclaim, right? And that becomes it's a painful process, right?
Plus, they're all called localhost.local domain, right? You know,
right.
Hey, look, man, it's not my fault you don't have working DNS. Like,
well, so I wrote the plugin for Vagrant that does automatic registration for RHEL, and let me tell you how painful it was debugging that piece of software when I would like running out of subs constantly.
So the big thing from my perspective is I want to make it so that the penalty for getting it wrong is next to nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm a sysadmin and I forget to delete a system out of inventory, so what, right? Like at the end of the day, so what, right? I want to visualize to you that you haven't done it, but I'm also not going to penalize you for not having done it, right?
Right.
So the first thing, and this is especially for the developer program, right? That's going to be an important capability is that new subscription experience we deliver via simple content access. It's only available to SAT customers today. We plan to release it at Summit for our customer portal customers, for our non-satellite customers. Okay. Cool. So what that means is that as a developer, you go to developers.redhat.com, you sign up for the developer program, you get your 16 entitlements of RHEL, go ahead and deploy the systems. They'll show up in Subscription Watch, right? You'll see how many are out there. But let's say, you've got 16 systems deployed, you threw away one, but you didn't unregister it, right? And then you go to build that 17th system. Without simple content access, we'll tell you, hey, dude, you're out of entitlements. You got to go find the one that needs to give up an entitlement. And you're like, dude, this sucks. I'd rather go use something else, right? That's usually the response that you get, right? Most people don't go spelunking for entitlements. Most people are like, this is friction. I'll just go use something else. Whereas when simple content access is turned on, go ahead, register that 17th system. We still give it access to content. The next morning, you log into Subscription Watch, you'll see you have 17 systems consuming content, and you can sort them by which one was the last, one that checked in, what have you. The great thing that we do in Subscription Watch is we do auto call out old systems. So let's say you did, you did delete a system, you threw away the VM, but you didn't properly unregister it. I believe in like 3 or 4 days, I can't remember the actual timing, but there is a auto calling that we do. So we're not representing that system as using content, even though it's actually been killed off. So that's like the kind of stuff that my team works on, is that like, look, we want to make it so that it's easy to use the stuff. We want to make it so that like, if you do something stupid, like you don't unregister a system, it's not the end of the world, right? And those capabilities are kind of top of mind for me. I can't wait for Summit to get here, honestly, because like our satellite customers have had simple content access since last Summit, and they love it.
Yeah.
Right. They absolutely love it because, again, it lets operators operate. Right. Like you don't have to have a PhD in Red Hat subs to build a freaking RHEL server. Right. Like that's it. Right. Like I have a PhD in Red subs because I'm financially compensated to have that PhD. Right. But most people aren't. Right. So that's really my goal. My goal is register and run, connect the box, enable the repos you need. If you need anything beyond the defaults, and just install the bits. Right. Let us worry about visualizing how many subscriptions and SKUs and entitlements and stuff that you're using, because we know all the dark art to count all that stuff. And that shouldn't be a blocker for you using the technology.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I wanted to sidebar just a little bit because someone in the chat brought up that if you do buy the learning subscription, you get 2 retakes, I think, per exam is the way they described it.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm reading something in the Twitch chat, so your mileage may vary. Go check it yourself. But it does sound like that there are retakes built into the subscription or the learning subscription.
There you go.
So I found a question that I think we should have addressed, but I lost it and then found it again.
Do you want to hold on a second and do the points and then
let's do
come back and
points
do
and
a
then come
closing
back to
question?
this.
Kind of?
Ooh,
Okay.
points.
Yes. So, Rich, I don't know if you've seen the show before, but we do a thing called the sweet internet points on this show, which if
don't laugh at it, Rich.
Yeah, don't laugh at it. There are
Serious
no subscriptions
stuff.
required.
So serious.
It is kind of like a subscription. In fact,
Mm.
The more shows you come to, the more points you get. And so, if you've ever used Slashdot or Reddit, which basically you can't work in tech and not have done those things, so upvoting, downvoting, the idea is that people are interested in collecting points. And so we decided to distribute points for the show. And currently our leaders are Narendev with 4,400 points.
Nice.
And Netherlands Hackham, as we've decided to pronounce that, is at 4,300 points. Sorry, I was looking in another window for the cut and paste for today's show, which should be that. It's also on the screen in case you see it there, but I just put it into the chat. Hopefully that's getting restreamed around. And then we have Noah Friction with 3,500 points, Joe Fuzz with 2,300 points, Detective Conan Kudo, who I didn't see today, with 900 points, but who's been a pretty strong new regular, and Bacon Fork, who's also been a strong new regular, but I also didn't see in the chat today.
Ooh, I like that name, Bacon Fork.
It is a good name.
It is a
really good name.
I have to be careful about the pronunciation, but other than that, it is a very good name. So thanks so much as always for coming and collecting points. I reiterate that we are so close to being able to make them more than just intrinsic value points. And we will hopefully be able to continue that imminently. So there's the points for today. I threw the way to get the points for today's show in the chat. So please see that there, or it's on the screen right now. Basically, you just go to that form and fill it in with this particular code. I will reiterate, because this is also getting closer. You may see these codes elsewhere on the kind of Red Hat properties. I don't really want to say the internet, but and so if you see those codes elsewhere, you can also submit those codes. If you submit an issue on the repo, or you submit a PR, or basically there's a whole activities page. Excuse me. There's other ways to earn points besides attending the show. You can also go and watch past shows and submit points for those. So that was the internet points, which we always like to hit. And we try to hit within the literal level up hour. But Chris, what was the question that you found?
So this might be a deep subject, but it's definitely for Rich. Could you talk about the differences on subscriptions between virtual and physical environments?
Man. All right.
And we have plenty of overflow time, so don't you worry.
Grab a glass of your favorite beverage and let Uncle Richie take you on a trip back into the subscription Wayback Machine. So, gosh, where do I start? All right. So, I'm going to do this. So long time ago in a Red Hat far away, we used to offer Red Hat subscriptions based solely on physical systems, right? Like we're talking in the world pre-virtualization, right? So you go buy your old like Dell PowerEdge 2650, you bought a RHEL sub, off you went, right? And back then, subscription management was really not a thing because it was just simple math. You counted pieces of hardware how many pieces of hardware you had, that's how many subs you purchased. Super easy. You didn't need a PhD in subscription management. GED in subscription management was about all you needed at that time, right? Then virtualization happened, right? And folks were like, well, hey, wait a minute. Like, while I can take those subscriptions I purchased for that Dell 2650 and use them on my virtual machine, that seems kind of wasteful, Red Hat. Like, a virtual machine only has like 2 vCPUs and 4 gigs of memory. And can you give me a subscription offering that covers a virtual machine? And what Red Hat looked at, Red Hat was like, all right, well, yes, we can do that. Let's introduce virtual style subscriptions. And those are subscriptions that were purchased based on a hypervisor, right? So you bought it for a hypervisor. And in addition to providing access to the hypervisor, you got a certain number of guests on top of it, right? And back in the day, this was 1, 4, or unlimited, right? Yes, there were some. Okay. Yeah, I'm predating you. This is like I said. This is like old Red Hat. This is This was back before Shadow Man possibly even had a shadow. Like this is old stuff, right? So then, as virtualization became more common and more prevalent, right? We kind of matured those subscriptions, and now we move to what we have today, what we call the virtual data center style subscription, which is you purchase it for two sockets at a time. You can stack them to use it for 4 socket boxes, and they still include an unlimited number of virtual machines. So if you're a customer and you're running, one of the supported hypervisors, and you have greater than 5 VMs on a hypervisor, which is trivial to do with today's modern hypervisors, more often than not, you're going to get that virtual style subscription. However, there are some cases where you do want a subscription that is for a virtual machine, but you don't necessarily have a ton of them on that hypervisor. So we have what we call convertible subscriptions. You'll also hear them called either or subscriptions, which will cover either a 2-socket system or 2 virtual machines or cloud instances, right? And those subscriptions are portable. They can be used on premise and in the public cloud. So that's really the major difference between the two. So if we go back to the 5 things that make up a Red Hat subscription, right? The thing that changes isn't the content, isn't the term, just how much of it do you get, right? Physical subscriptions just cover a physical system, whereas the virtual subscriptions may cover either a virtual machine or a group of virtual machines co-located on a singular hypervisor. There are a whole bunch of other really weird, wacky permutations of those, right? Like as an example, our current SKU catalog, like the list of subscriptions we actively will honor, that number, anybody want to guess since we're playing guessing games today?
It's got to be
not that high. We're not that crazy. But the number's north of about 30,000, right? 30,000 currently honored subscriptions, right?
Sorry. You said like SKUs you can acquire.
Well, no, SKUs that at least one customer has.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Some of them may have been end of sale, but because of contracts, we sometimes allow customers to renew.
I thought you meant that like ever existed, and I was like, I know.
So ever existed is probably about 50,000.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So it's there's a huge amount of permutations of Red Hat subscriptions out there, right? And again, if you think about it, like. I'll use an example. So let's say I want to have just like a 2-socket RHEL subscription, right? So, all right, well, 2-socket RHEL subscription probably needs to come in premium, standard, self-support, right? So that's times 3 already, right? Yeah. Then I need a 1-year version, a 2-year version, a 3-year version, a 4-year version, a 5-year version. Crap, we're at 15, right?
Right.
Okay, I need to offer some to be sold and supported by Red Hat, some to be sold and supported by the OEMs. Double that number, right? Oof. So you could see like just bringing a singular subscription to the market, a single offering to the market will sometimes lead to 50, 60, 100 new SKUs being created, right? And that complexity has historically matriculated through all of the tooling, all the way down to the poor operator who's like, do I attach a RH0003 or RH0004? Right.
Right.
Again, that's that's why it's complex, right? It's complex because as we change those 5 things that make up a subscription, it makes the permutations of subscriptions we have to create. My job is to insulate the operator from all of that madness, because it's madness. Like I'm not even gonna try to defend it. It's madness, right? So for me, I want to make it so that you log into a tool like Subscription Watch and be able to see the types of RHEL you're using. Like in Subscription Watch, we will visualize the difference between RHEL running on a physical system versus a number of virtual machines that are on a hypervisor. Like we will show you that differently, because it does matter. It doesn't matter from a like, what repos do I access? They all are RHEL. You have access to RHEL repos. Doesn't matter at that aspect, but it does matter at the, at the end of the year, we got to go buy a thing from Red Hat, and we need to understand how many in column A and how many in column B do we need. So we do represent them very differently in Subscription Watch.
Thank you for the answer. I mean, seriously, like I could go take that snippet and now share it with hundreds of people. So thank you very much for that.
I was thinking about like how far back in Red Hat history that I wanted to go on subscription management, but it's evolved, right? And again, I think it's something that if you understand the whole story of how we got to where we're at today, it makes a bit more sense. Like Red Hat, so like in the past, when people were just buying physical systems, subscription management was easy. Virtualization came along and honestly complicated a lot of the things around subscription management. And we made attempts over the years to try to bring some sanity to the very dynamic world of virtualization and understanding what people are using. And the tools kind of became complex in a process. They didn't really become complex by design. They became complex almost as a side effect, but they became complex enough that they were impeding people from using the things that they paid for. That's bad, right? Like my dad used to always say, if someone wants to give you their money, you take their money before they change their mind, right? And it became very difficult for our paying customers. And even like when I say paying customers, if you're in a developer program, to me, you're a paying customer, right? You might not be paying me in cash, but you're paying me in time, you're paying me in adoption, you're paying me in all those other things that still matter to Red Hat, right? So if our tools are providing friction to you, that's bad, right? So we now have to evolve the tools to solve the goal of helping people understand what they're using, where they're using it, and how much of it that they're using, while also not getting in their way, right? We want to be able to do both of those things and do it in such a manner to where, most people will be okay with it.
Well, I think the other thing too that people forget about with subscription management, right, is that Red Hat was actually a very early adopter of the subscription concept for software.
Right.
And as a result, right, they built a very early implementation. And like all legacy software, the reason we call it legacy software, even if it's 6 weeks old, is because for some reason we don't, the architecture of it, the design of it, whatever, is hard to adapt to the changes in business or technology or whatever it is that you need to adapt it to. And subscription manager is going to suffer from that, but it also suffers from a secondary type of legacy, right? Is that there's a whole mess of business processes that go around it, right? So as a result, it's not just evolving the software over time, but it's also evolving the business processes and honoring, you were talking about 5-year SKUs, I don't even know, there might even be longer ones, I don't even know, that, so that you have to honor all those old ones in the new software as well. So you can't just rip and replace your subscription management like you could actually do with like your web server, right? Which if you decide you want to get away from Apache and move to Nginx, that's a lot of ways a lot easier to do because you don't have to evolve business processes around it.
Right.
So I think that I think people forget subscription manager is we were talking about this a bit before the show. It's a bit of a bad rap because you have all this stuff around the piece of software that impacts how the software can function. And so when you see a UI problem or whatever in using a subscription manager, there may be a reason for it. It may not just be that, there's, a bad software design or something. And so I just wanted to kind of bring up that point is that, and I think especially the part about it, Red Hat being a relatively early adopter of that product type, at all.
Yeah, I mean, my team, we spend a lot of time working with the back office people who bring the offerings to market, right? And we help them through that process, right? Because like our front end and back end weren't connected for a while. So there were scenarios where like there were people who would build offerings that just like fundamentally didn't work with our subscription tools, right? And we didn't have, the processes and the checks and balances in place to ensure that. So now that's what I mean. Like my team, like in the history of Red Hat's a 20-plus-year-old company, right? My team's been around for 2, right? And in those 2 years, we've taken an advisory level approach to a lot of the back office functions at Red Hat. Like, hey, this is how this is going to interact with, the tooling that the end user uses, or the thing that you think that you want to sell, we can't count. So maybe we need to build a tool to count it, right? Because like the business is going to evolve, right? Like today, Red Hat sells most of their stuff through, yearly subscriptions, but that isn't universally true because I can go through the various cloud providers and purchase Red Hat stuff by the hour, right? Mm-hmm. Or, business models may change to something else in the future. And we have to make sure that we have the tooling and stuff in place. So it is kind of this end-to-end experience that we're really looking at from the point where, some VPs like, I want to sell something, to the point where, I have to express to, the person who bought the thing, how many of the thing are they using? Like that's an entire like life cycle that we now look at holistically. Whereas in the past, we looked at it very separately, like SKUs were done over here and product and engineering was done over here. And, reporting was done. Well, honestly, we pushed that down to sales. Sales will figure it out. And that was how things were done. And that's not something that's going to be scalable. So now, like, we're working with, the OpenShift BU. I mean, I think we were basically indentured to them all the time. And that's just because they're offering all kinds of new stuff that needs to be counted. So we work with them very heavily to understand, like, here's how this thing is going to go to market. Here's how it's packaged. Here's how it's sold. Here's how it's metric. Here's how it's metered. So that, on day 0, when that new product goes out of the door, we want to be able to say, yes, Mr. Customer, it's super easy to set up and use, and you'll be able to understand how much of it you're using on day 1, right? And that's the goal. And we're playing a little bit of catch up, right? We've only been around for 2 years. We got a whole portfolio to catch up on, but that's our goal, right? You buy a Red Hat product, you should be able to instantiate that Red Hat product without friction, be able to see how much of that Red Hat product you're using, and be able to see that over time. And if I can do that, along with the rest of the product managers and business analysts on my team, then we've hit a home run. And honestly, if we do that, you'll probably never see me on this call again because I won't exist. People will be like, Rich who? But that's my goal.
Well, and I don't think you should gloss over the fact of having the kind of bird's eye view of all that you mentioned, right? So it's not only frictionless access and getting it connected and getting it engaged and that stuff, but it's also that bird's eye view of what am I using is also hugely important and difficult to present.
I mean, we have customers, and I mean, I've worked with some of Red Hat's biggest customers where just getting the count of things that they are running is a multi-month process.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just sitting there thinking, like, it's something that has to be done. Yeah. But does it got to take months?
As a software consultant to large Fortune 500 companies, I spent and was paid many, many dollars to just identify all the projects they had going on and put them into some sort of portfolio, much less the systems they were running.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a real challenge, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it so that, one, shorten that amount of time, right? If I can make that as close to real time as possible, that's better. One, because it helps out our sales organization. Yes, we have one of those. I have to care about them. But it also helps out the customer, right? Because at some point, some poor sysadmin is going to be told, go count the things, right? And that's, it's like, really? So in addition to patching these servers, building these servers, dealing with the compliance people down my neck, I also need to go grab inventory. Oh, okay, great. That's going to suck, right? So if I could take out that one particular pain point, which is a particularly large one for some of our biggest customers, that's, I mean, that's huge.
Right. Yeah, totally. We should probably shut the show down. We're quite a bit over time.
I've got lights dying and everything. Their batteries have been drained. Yeah, so it's time to wrap it up.
It's a good show when that happens.
Right. Gordon, did you have any closing kind of comments or thoughts that you wanted to add in?
Just in 30 seconds or less, just to reiterate what I said, which is, look, guys, if you're interested in level up OpenShift subscriptions, you've got 5 active RHEL subs or more, and it is 5, I double checked. And no OpenShift, go to that landing page that we talked about. I think Chris, you probably posted it.
I just posted it again. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. And at the same time, RHCSAs take advantage of those offers we talked about. So that's anything we can do on that front. If you have any questions on this, there is actually an external alias I can give you guys. It's levelup@redhat.com. So feel free to email that if you have questions on any of this.
And if you want to make comments on Subscription Manager, there is bugzilla.redhat.com for what's the best way to give feedback on Subscription Manager, Rich?
So if you got a legit bug, just open up a legit bug. My team gets them. If you have feedback that's not necessarily bug related, email me directly. I'm rich@redhat.com. It took me 10 years to get that one. Yes. I had to wait for a guy to leave to get that one. But yeah, I'm rich@redhat.com. Email me directly, and I'll probably loop in other people on our team. I'm very enthused to get field feedback because it does very much shape our tooling and shapes kind of our opinion on where we want to go. So yeah, if you got a bug, just open up a good old classic bug in Bugzilla. But if it's other feedback, just email me and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thanks. And Chris, with our
last question came in from Detective Conan Kudo. Yeah. Does that mean folks using individual RHEL developer for prod subs, can we get free OpenShift too? It's a good question.
I had that same exact thought when you said 5 production subs.
Yeah.
So now we're offering with the developer sub 16 production subs. Are 5 of those sufficient to qualify you for?
That's a great question. I think there's a service that runs ultimately in the background. If it's I think the service states it has to be a paid RHEL sub. I don't know. Wow, I'll have to get back. Email levelup@redhat.com. And I can try to look into that for you.
We will try to bring the results of that question back to the show in the future. I did want to give a little bit of a shout out for our next show, which is speaking of subs, is Chris and I will be talking about Developer Sandbox, which is a way that you can get free access to an OpenShift instance where you can run a bunch of stuff. And so we're going to play around with that, probably complain about some of the things that aren't there yet that we want. But, who knows? We may be able to have a guest from the team. We're not sure if we've lined that up or not. We'll definitely be talking about Developer Sandbox. We just don't know if we're going to have a guest as well. So that's next time. So same bat channel, same bat place, same bat location. I can't remember the phrase goes.
And as always, folks, if we didn't get to your question, feel free to email me at cshort@redhat.com
or Langdon@redhat.
Langdon@redhat.com, or hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Chris Short with 2 S's. That is Langdon with a 1 as opposed to an L on Twitter. And Tillmore doesn't use Twitter at all. And side angle side, if you want to dive into anything that Rich has said today, right? He might just tell you, be like, ooh, send me an email. But it could be that complex. We can't handle it on Twitter. So yeah, just if you need to reach out and didn't get your question answered, I apologize. That's my fault. email us. We can get it answered. So thank you all for joining us today. Rich, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your help. Gordon, thank you as well for talking about all the fun things that the Level Up Hour is bringing to our wonderful customer base. And until next time, folks, we'll see you, and stay safe out there, everybody.
Well,
see ya.
Bye.